I hope by now all of you have already installed Eclipse. I will go ahead and start my Eclipse. So by default, if the first time you answer you have like opened your Eclipse, they will ask you to create a workspace. But for me, I set it up to be in this path. For you, you can set up to be in every or any location you want, either on the desktop, and you create an Eclipse workspace there. So I launch my workspace. Uh, I wait for it to open, and once it's open, I have something like this. So we'll start by file. We create a new Java project. I'm going to call it class uh, class one tutorial, on the first class tutorial. That's the name. I don't create module info, and here on this I'll go to source and create new class. So I haven't talked about classes yet in the classroom, so we just create it like we don't know, but we'll talk later about classes in Java. So once you're done, you click finish, and now what you have to do, you have like this part of the code on in main.java. So today we talked about something called primitive types in Java. So like I said something earlier, like if you want to write a single line of comment, you use double spaces. But if you want to do like a block of comment, you do something like this. This is a block of comment, means like comments that span many lines of code. So without going further, let's start about something called public static void main. Here we'll put string. So in every program, mainly in C or C++ or Java, when you see something called a main, is like this main is like a starting point of every program. Means everything that I write within space is the one that going to be executed when the program gets called. So every code I want to run, when the program gets executed, I have to put them inside this main class. So I'm going to start with the primitive types, or primitive types, or something called, which is called basic data type in Java. Basic data types in Java. So the first things I'm going to talk about is called integer, or integer. So in integer, the way we declare integers, I think you still remember that the variables or variables are memory space used to hold variable or values. So integer used to hold what we call numbers or real numbers without float or decimal values. So perhaps let's start something like my int, which is equal to 3. So remember, like my int, you can name your integer to the value you want. So this is just a regular integer. So int my int. So let's say if I was to print this integer, I would do system dot out dot print line and inside here I put the value I want to print, which is my int. So if I run this code, you see that I have my 3 here. So let's say I want to now to store a value that's a float. I will use a data type called double, my double. Now this I want it to hold a value called, let's say, 5.7, because 5.7 or 778. So this, if I was to say, let me go back, and my int it hold 3.2, I will get an error. This error will tell me that type mismatch cannot convert from double to integer. So I have a double here, which is now available for my thing. And if I was to, let's say I want to calculate the sum of my int added to my double. So you see here we have an error also that says type mismatch cannot convert from double to int. The idea is we are using a double and we are storing it into an integer. So basically this was supposed to give us something like 8.777. I hope you see that, because it's a sum of my int, my double. But if we wanted to it to not produce the error, we use something casting, which is we take which will take the integer value of the sum, and then we return the only thing that's an int. And if we were to print our sum, you'll see that it's 8. So, and you remember something I want you to know is that every statement or line of code in Java is terminated by a semicolon. If you just write a line, you have to put a semicolon to indicate that it's the end. So back to our example here, you see we were supposed to have 8.77, but now we have 8. It's because we are storing the sum in an int, and we are casting our sum to give us what's an integer. So it will give us this part of only 8. Continuing, I would like to talk something called, after an integer, something called a boolean. A boolean is used to hold true or false value. So that means 1 or 0. So usually we use this Boolean value to hold things we'll be using in conditions. I'm going to do something I didn't talk about if condition, but we'll talk about them very soon. So let's say if is I'll have first to go declare a Boolean. Boolean is rainy, and this is true. So it's true. So it's like it's raining. So we are going to say if it's raining, what do we do if it's raining? We say print line, you need an umbrella. So we just print you need an umbrella if it's raining. So let's take a look of what's it look like. Once we run, we see that you need an umbrella. The cause of you need an umbrella is just because it's learning. But if it was not learning, which is mean the value of is running is 0 or false, we will learn. You see, we have nothing in the terminal, so in the console of our running. So basically, that's the use of a boolean. So in the future, we'll be learning programs that require us to make a conclusion where the possible outcome is 1 or 0. We may use a boolean in that. So the next things I'm going to talk about, a primitive type I want to talk about, is called a character. Character, or which is basically a very variable of one character. So if it is not one character, it's something called string, which we will see in our next course after this one. So let's say I want to have something called car. We declare character by call 9 equal 9 equal 9. I put a semicolon here. So this is different than something we say is an integer called a equal 9. This is very different. I would like to explain why it's very different. A character, so is because in every character, or like if you see your keyboard, you have various characters. If you count them, those characters are 256. Means they range from 0 to 255 the way they're stored. And their storage, they use something called ASCII code storage mapping. You can look up this on Google, you will see it. ASCII code mapping is like if you write a character, perhaps let's say 9, or A or B or C or F. This character is getting it reads that character and store the memory or store its mapping number. Because if we are going to use that character, we call it like the system goes in check its mapping value and then it calls back. So perhaps I can show you with an example. If we're to do a system print line and we print this integer, it will be 9. And let's say we want to know the value of the mapped value of 9. What we do, we call an integer int mapped value. And what we do a casting. So we do a casting into integer, and then what we cast our value there 9. So now what we can do, we can the print line of the mapped value. Yeah. So once we run our program, you see here we have 57. This 57 means is the mapped value of 9. Let's say it's f. The mapped value of f is 1 or 2. If we were to change our f and say r is 114, so it ranges from 0 to 255. That's the difference. So if you were going to use something like an integer and you declared it's a car, you will be using a number that's 144. Or let's say, let's go back to 9. If you say it's you cast and you say I'm casting 9 into integer and you hope that you're using 9, you'll be not using 9, you'll be using a variable called variable that has a value of 57. That's the difference here. So after this, I would like to go and talk more about something like more data types. So basically that's the data types you need to know, but there is other rules you have to know regarding data types. Let's say have some integer called a. I will have to comment this out and comment this out. Okay. Let's say I have an integer a that has a value of 2, and I have an integer b that have a value of 3. and I want to do an integer c that has a value of a over b. This is something I talked about in the beginning, but by simple calculation, this one will be giving you like 0.6666. And let's do something like integer d equals to b over a, and this one is supposed to give us something like 1.5, if I'm right. Yeah, that's 1.5. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and print c and print d. So by running my program, you see that I have here 0 and 1. So means c is 0 and d is 1. But we have that 0.66. That means it's only turning a 0 and it's only turning a 1. The idea is what I talked in the beginning, is that if we declare an integer and the result or expected return is a float or something with decimal, it will only give us the part of an integer. So that's it. So if we wanted to see this, we would have said, let's say this is a double, and then once we run, you see we have no, it's not the same. Let me talk about it in the next example. The next example I'm going to give is called let's say I will have integer f equal 20, and we have a double r equal 22, and then I would say like int result equal let's say f over r. By doing some calculation, we are supposed to have 20 over 22 is some 0.909 9 something like that. So that's the expected results. But the problem we have now here we have an error. The error, I say tab mismatch, cannot convert from double to int. What it means is that we are trying to take an integer, which is f, and we are dividing a double. So like we are trying to take two different things. It's like you are comparing a dog to a cat, and we were only asked about to do operation on a dog. So it doesn't match. So something we can do, first, we can do something like this. We can use the method we saw, which is called casting in the beginning. So you just say, okay, so let's take everything we have here and turn it into an int. And if we were going to print this, we'll say, okay, so print our result. So if we were to print our result, it will give us a 0, which means if we're doing some operation, let's say an average, a sum, a calculation, program that do something, there are numbers we are missing. So the way to handle this, it's okay. The way to handle this is just creating something that match. Let's say, okay, now we know the answer we're going to get is a double, and that double is f over r. No, double result. This one I need to comment it out, and I say double result. So now I can print my result. where is, I have an error. I didn't put a semicolon here. How I run, you see? Now we have the answer we wanted. So basically what I wanted to introduce in this class, or in this part of the class, is way how to use variables and how to handle them. So means if you know that you are going to say, let's do a quotient of a number, product of a number, you're going to calculate average, you need to know, like, to think what could be the possible answer. Like the worst case, the answer should be, is it going to be float, is it going to be an integer? So you declare those variable accordingly. So that's it. I will stop by here, and now, and tomorrow class we'll see something called I will start something called a string. A string is an array of characters. Today we saw how to manipulate one character, but tomorrow will be more deep into more of strings. Thank you.